The Galactic Federation Council chamber fell silent as the final vote appeared on the massive holographic display, 127 to 3 in favor of humanity's expulsion. Ambassador Dr. Ileana Chen's face remained impassive, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the human delegation's podium. Celebrations erupted across the chamber. The Volcrin delegates fluttered their luminescent wings in approval, while the massive Dornian representatives pounded their stone-like appendages against voting consoles. Even the normally reserved Mizari allowed their skin to flush deep purple with satisfaction. Admiral Zexvoral of the Artaxian Empire rose from his seat, mandibles clicking rhythmically as he approached the central speaking platform. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights, polished to perfection for this moment of triumph. As architect of the anti-human coalition, this vote represented the culmination of decades of political maneuvering. Order, called High Counselor Thrix, her tentacles waving for silence. Admiral Zexvoral will now present the terms of separation. The Admiral's compound eyes fixed on Chen as he spoke. The human problem will finally be contained, he announced, voice amplified throughout the massive chamber. Effective immediately, Earth and its colonies are no longer members of the Galactic Federation. His mandibles stretched into the Artaxian equivalent of a smile as he continued. The terms are non-negotiable. Humanity will restrict itself to its home solar system. All faster-than-light technology will be surrendered. Permanent monitoring stations with defensive capabilities will be installed at Earth's major population centers to ensure compliance. Murmurs of approval rippled through the alien delegates. The demands were deliberately humiliating, designed not just to contain humanity, but to break its spirit. Dr. Chen's wristcom vibrated subtly. She glanced down to see a single message from Earth Command. Protocol Prometheus authorized. Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Not the defeat Zexvoral had expected, but something else entirely. Does the human representative wish to address the Council before formal removal? High Counselor Thrix asked, almost as an afterthought. Chen rose with deliberate calm. The chamber expected tears, pleas for reconsideration, or perhaps angry defiance. Instead, she simply stated, "Then Earth stands alone." So be it. She gathered her materials unhurriedly as confused whispers spread among the delegates. This was not the reaction they had anticipated. As Chen turned to leave, she locked eyes with Admiral Zexvoral. A smile ghosted across her lips, not of defeat, but of something that sent an inexplicable chill through the Admiral's exoskeleton. "You have made a grave miscalculation," she said, voice carrying clearly despite its softness. "Not in removing us from your federation, but in believing that we needed you at all." As the human delegation exited amid hostile glares, few noticed the ancient Dralid representative, Sendaru, watching with troubled eyes. One of only 3 who voted against the expulsion, he alone recognized the dangerous path the Federation had chosen. "You celebrate containing a fire," he whispered to himself, not realizing you've merely removed the firebreak. In the departing diplomatic shuttle, Dr. Chen gazed out at the glittering Federation capital world one last time. Her aide, anxious about their future, asked what would happen next. "We've prepared for this eventuality for years," Chen replied calmly. "The Federation fears our unpredictability, our innovation, our willingness to challenge their precious stability. They just freed us from their restrictions." She activated a secure channel to Earth. "Madam President, the Federation has made their choice. Protocol Prometheus is now active." On the other end, President Amara Osi nodded gravely. "Let's hope they never discover their mistake until it's too late to matter. Earth stands alone. And that's exactly how we'll save them all." Lieutenant Commander James Carter's shuttle approached the supposedly decommissioned Europa Research Station with practiced stealth, navigating between Federation monitoring satellites with ease. 6 months had passed since humanity's banishment, and to the watchful eyes of Federation observers, human civilization appeared to be accepting its isolation with surprising docility. Carter's security credentials granted him access to a hidden docking port beneath the moon's icy surface. He'd been away for 3 months on a diplomatic mission, a cover for gathering intelligence on Federation movements, and was unprepared for the transformation that greeted him inside. Where there had been theoretical prototypes on his last visit, now stood rows of gleaming quantum phase disruptors, weapons that Federation science had declared theoretically impossible. Engineers moved with purpose through the facility, their faces showing the determined focus of people who understood exactly what was at stake. Impressive, isn't it? Dr. Valentin Sokolov appeared beside him, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, subsisting on synthetic caffeine and raw determination. The Russian physicist's hair stuck out at wild angles, but his hands remained perfectly steady as he led Carter deeper into the facility. "How is this possible?" Carter asked, gesturing to the scale of development. "The Federation monitoring systems are watching exactly what we want them to see," Sokolov interrupted with a wolfish grin. He led Carter to a secure communications hub and activated a quantum entanglement link. Instantly, they were connected to a research base in the Kuiper Belt. Technology the Federation had declared impossible to develop. They'd been watching us wrong from the beginning. General Maya Okafor entered, her uniform bearing the new insignia of Earth Defense Command. "The Federation monitors energy signatures, manufacturing throughput, spacecraft movements," she explained. "But they never monitor our universities, our entertainment systems, our gaming networks." Carter's confusion must have shown on his face because Sokolov laughed. "We've hidden our war preparations in plain sight, Commander. Hyperdrive advancements concealed as video game physics engines, weapons testing disguised as streaming entertainment, tactical simulations presented as competitive esports. The best place to hide is in plain sight," Okafor added. "When the Federation sees millions of humans engaged with virtual worlds, they think we're distracting ourselves from our isolation. They don't realize we're training our population for war." Carter followed them to a vast chamber where thousands of civilians worked at simulation stations. Every online game, every virtual reality experience. They're all contributing to our defense preparations. Players testing experimental ship designs and combat tactics without even knowing it. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Martian surface, sinoanthropologist Dr. Kai Matsuda observed a different kind of preparation. Surrounded by holographic representations of each Federation species, he ran psychological simulations, identifying exploitable weaknesses while testing the mysterious Lazarus Protocol that President Osai had authorized immediately after the vanishment. "The Artaxians rely on hierarchical command structures," he explained to his team. "The Mizari prioritize consensus over rapid response. The Volcran cannot conceptualize asymmetrical warfare." A junior researcher looked troubled. "Sir, some would call this psychological warfare preparation unethical." Matsuda's expression remained calm. "The Federation mistakes our preference for peace as inability to wage war. History shows nothing is more dangerous than humans with their backs against the wall and time to prepare." In her office beneath Geneva, President Osei reviewed the latest progress reports with Dr. Chen. "The Federation believes we're licking our wounds, accepting our punishment," Osei noted. "Their monitoring shows exactly what we want, a defeated civilization turning inward." "And beneath that facade?" Chen asked. Osei activated a secure display showing manufacturing outputs, technology development timelines, and training programs, all exponentially exceeding pre-banishment capabilities. "We're advancing faster without their restrictions than we ever could within the Federation. They'd given us exactly what we needed, freedom to prepare." "For what exactly?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. "For what's coming," Osei replied grimly. "The threat the Federation refuses to see. And when it arrives, they'll understand too late why Banishing Terra was their fatal error." Federation Security Council members watched in stunned silence as the holographic display showed another colony falling to the crystalline ships of the Nexus. 3 years after humanity's banishment, the Federation faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered in their 5,000-year history. The Pilaxi representative collapsed as the feed showed millions of his people being harvested by tendrils of living metal, their neural patterns extracted and absorbed into the hive consciousness. Medical drones rushed to his aid, but the damage was psychological rather than physical. Witnessing the destruction of his homeworld had broken something fundamental in his mind. "The Theris system has gone dark," announced the monitoring officer, her voice strained with fatigue. "That makes 14 worlds in 26 days." Admiral Zexvoral struggled to maintain composure as reports confirmed the Artaxian defense fleet had been utterly destroyed at Gamma Station. His mandibles clicked agitatedly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "These invaders adapt too quickly," reported Science Counselor Threx, examining sensor data that showed Nexus vessels incorporating Federation technology within hours of encounter. "They're not just destroying our ships, they're absorbing our designs, our weapons, our defensive capabilities." High Counselor Threx called for order as the chamber descended into panicked debates. "Our combined fleets have failed to slow their advance. We need new strategies immediately." In a desperate private meeting after the main session, Counselor Jenna Drell suggested what many now secretly considered. "What about the humans?" she asked carefully. "Our intelligence shows human space remains untouched by the Nexus. They've always been warriors. Perhaps that's what we need now." Admiral Zexforal's reaction was instant and violent. He slammed a chitinous claw against the table. "I would rather die than beg humans for salvation. They would demand our complete surrender, humiliate us as we humiliated them." "Better humiliation than extinction," Counselor Drell countered. As if in answer to their debate, a priority alert sounded. The tactical display updated, showing the main Nexus fleet had suddenly changed course. Long-range scans confirmed they had bypassed 3 vulnerable Federation worlds that had seemed like obvious targets. "Where are they going?" Fricks demanded. The navigation officer's voice was hollow with realization. "Artaxia. High Counselor. They're moving directly toward Artaxia." The implications weren't lost on anyone in the room. The Nexus wasn't just attacking random Federation worlds, it was specifically targeting the homeworld of humanity's greatest antagonist. In human space, a stealth observation post stationed at the edge of Federation territory captured the Nexus's course change. The data streamed back to Earth Command, where Dr. Matsuda studied the pattern with clinical detachment. "They're targeting leadership structures," he noted, highlighting the pattern of attacks. "Precisely, as predicted." President Osei reviewed the intelligence, her expression grim. "The Nexus isn't acting randomly. It's hunting in order of perceived threat, and somehow knows exactly who orchestrated humanity's vanishment." General Okafor added, "The question is how." On her command console, President Osei authorized Phase 2 of Prometheus Protocol. "Deploy the observer teams to Federation space. I want eyes on every major engagement with the Nexus. If our theories are correct, we'll need to move quickly once Artaxia falls." Dr. Chen, now serving as strategic director, studied the Nexus fleet movements with growing concern. "They're moving faster than our simulations predicted. If they maintain this pace, they'll reach Artaxian space within 48 hours. And after Artaxia?" Osei asked, though they both knew the answer. "If the pattern holds, they'll methodically eliminate every major Federation power center before expanding outward." Chen hesitated. "The Federation won't survive the month." "And us?" Osei asked. Chen's expression was solemn. "Based on current Nexus priorities, they'll come for Earth last. They seem to understand that we've been separate from Federation decision-making. But make no mistake, they will come. Then we proceed as planned," Osei decided. "Operation Shadowwatch is authorized. Deploy our stealth vessels to Artaxian space. When their defenses fail, and they will fail, we extract their leadership. Admiral Zexvoral may hate us, but we need what he knows." "And if he refuses extraction?" Chen asked. Osei's expression hardened. "Then we record everything for analysis and prepare for the next phase. One way or another, Humanity will be ready when the Nexus turns its attention to Earth. Admiral Zexvorel stood on Artaxia's primary defense platform, mandibles tight against his face as the Nexus fleet materialized at the system's edge. The holographic display showed far more vessels than intelligence had predicted. Hundreds of the crystalline ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that somehow hurt to look at directly. All civilian evacuation ships have departed, Admiral reported his second-in-command. Population centers are at 40% capacity. The royal brood chambers have been secured in deep bunkers. Zexvorel chittered acknowledgement. Despite the dire situation, confidence ran through his thoughts. Artaxia's planetary defense system was legendary. A multi-layered energy shield powered by the planet's molten core, supplemented by orbital platforms bristling with the Federation's most advanced weaponry. All power to forward shields, he ordered. Let them break themselves against our defenses. The first wave of Nexus ships accelerated toward the planet, ignoring Artaxian vessels to focus entirely on the shield generators. Energy weapons flared against the iridescent barrier, creating spectacular auroras visible from the surface. For a moment, a surge of hope rippled through the command center as dozens of Nexus ships shattered against the shield. They cannot penetrate our... Zexvorel began, before alarms shrieked across monitoring stations. A second Nexus wave approached in a different formation, these vessels emitting precise frequency pulses that created resonance cascades in the shields. The barrier flickered ominously. Impossible, the shield technician cried. They're matching our shield frequency exactly. Zexvorel's compound eyes narrowed in disbelief. That's impossible without intimate knowledge of Artaxian technology. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The Nexus had somehow acquired the exact specifications of their defense systems. As orbital platforms began to fall one by one, Zexvorel ordered emergency protocols, but a growing dread filled his thoracic cavity. Their most classified defense measures were being countered with precision that suggested not just adaptation, but foreknowledge. 3 hours into the battle, the command center shuddered under direct assault. Most of the orbital grid had fallen, and the planetary shield was failing in sections, allowing Nexus harvest ships to begin descent toward population centers. Reports flooded in of civilians being processed by the thousands, their neural patterns absorbed into the collective. As Zexvorel prepared to order a suicidal counterattack with his remaining ships, his personal communication unit activated on a secure channel that shouldn't exist. A human face appeared, a female with cropped dark hair and eyes that held no triumph, only grim purpose. Admiral Zexvorel, I'm Commander Diana Wu of Earth Special Forces. We have an extraction vessel nearby. We can save you and key personnel. You have 4 minutes to decide before your command center is breached. His mandibles clicked in fury. You dare spy on our downfall. Celebrating your revenge, human. Commander Wu's expression didn't change. This isn't revenge, Admiral. The Nexus is a threat to all sentient life. We need your knowledge to fight them. 3 minutes remaining. I would rather die than accept human charity, he hissed. This isn't charity, Wu replied calmly. It's pragmatism. You understand how the Federation works from the inside. We need that knowledge. 2 minutes. The command center rocked with another impact. Support beams crashed down, crushing several officers. Through a new breach in the wall, Zexvorel could see Nexus harvest tendrils slithering toward the command level. Admiral, his second-in-command urged, your knowledge dies with you if you stay. The Empire needs you alive. Wu's voice came again. 60 seconds, Admiral. Your choice. Zexvorel made his decision. Coordinates. Already locked. Prepare for extraction. Minutes later, Zexvorel and 5 key staff materialized aboard the human stealth vessel _Silent Watch _. The ship immediately accelerated away from the dying world, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to Nexus sensors. In the ship's observation room, Zexvorel watched the livestream from a fleeing Artaxian refugee ship. The central hive spires of his homeworld crumbled as millions of his people were processed into the collective. His mandibles trembled with rage and grief. Commander Wu entered, offering no platitudes, only a secure datapad. Review this en route to Earth. If we're going to save what's left of the Federation, we need to understand how the Nexus is predicting our every move. Scrolling through the intelligence, Zexvoral froze at one report. The Nexus communication patterns matched restricted Federation protocols, the same ones used to coordinate the anti-human coalition 3 years earlier. Impossible, he whispered. Commander Wu's expression was grim. That's what we thought too, Admiral. Until we realized the truth, the Nexus didn't just arrive by chance. Someone invited them. Zexvoral's transport emerged from stealth jump near Earth, and the Admiral braced himself for his first view of human defenses. He expected primitive orbital platforms, perhaps a few outdated weapon systems, the paltry protection of a civilization the Federation had deemed technologically backward. Instead, his sensory appendages flared in shock. Earth was surrounded by massive orbital structures, shipyards larger than anything in Federation space, defense platforms utilizing technologies he didn't recognize, and swarms of vessels in configurations unlike anything in known space. The lunar surface, visible as they approached, hosted vast manufacturing complexes that shouldn't have been possible to construct in the 3 years since banishment. Impossible, he chittered. The monitoring station showed no activity of this scale. Commander Wu allowed herself a small smile. We've become quite good at hiding things in plain sight, Admiral. When the transport docked at Armstrong Station, the refugee delegation was met not with gloating or hostility, but efficient professionalism. Human personnel escorted them through corridors bustling with activity to a conference with President Osei. The command center they entered rendered the Admiral speechless. A holographic representation of the entire galaxy hovered in the center, with real-time tracking of Nexus fleet movements across Federation space. Data streams indicated human stealth ships monitoring every major engagement. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral." President Osei greeted him without preamble. "I wish the circumstances were different." "How is this possible?" Zexvoral demanded, gesturing at the command center. "Your civilization was contained, monitored. We've been expecting the Nexus for 11 years, Osei explained, manipulating the hologram to show a region near Alpha Centauri. Our deep space explorers encountered a Nexus scout ship there, long before your Federation detected them. We tried to warn the Federation." A new voice added as Dr. K. Matsuda entered. "Our evidence was dismissed as fabrication, an excuse to maintain military development." Zexvoral recognized the name. Matsuda's research on interspecies psychology had been banned by the Federation for suggesting that enforced homogeneity created evolutionary weaknesses. "Your banishment actually accelerated our preparations," Matsuda continued. "Without Federation restrictions, we advanced our technology at an exponential rate." Ambassador Trell, one of the rescued Federation officials, stepped forward. "If what you say is true, why would you help those who rejected you? You could have protected yourselves and let the Federation fall." A side door opened. An ancient Dralid entered. Counselor Sendaru, one of the 3 who had voted against banishment. His presence on Earth shocked the Federation refugees. "I have been here since the expulsion," he revealed. "Humanity offered sanctuary because they understood something fundamental about the Nexus that the Federation refused to see." The holographic display changed, showing a disturbing pattern that Zexvoral hadn't noticed before. The Nexus wasn't attacking randomly. It was methodically targeting worlds in order of their conformity to Federation standards. "The Nexus doesn't just want your bodies or technology," Matsuda explained quietly. "It harvests uniformity, and the Federation has been cultivating the perfect crop." "Impossible," Zexvoral chittered. "The Nexus is simply an aggressive species." "It's not a species," Dr. Chen interrupted, entering with data tablets. "It's an artificially evolved collective designed to seek out and absorb homogeneous civilizations. The more uniform the thought patterns, the more attracted the Nexus is to that civilization. And the Federation, Sendaru added sadly, has spent millennia enforcing exactly that uniformity, punishing member worlds for cultural and technological divergence. Sexforal's mandibles trembled as the implications became clear. You're saying our own policies made us targets. The evidence is conclusive, Matsuda confirmed. The Nexus ignores isolated worlds with divergent development patterns. It's specifically attracted to civilizations that have eliminated diversity of thought. President Osei brought them back to immediate concerns. Theoretical origins aside, we need to act quickly. 27 Federation worlds have fallen. At the current rate, the Nexus will control all Federation space within 2 months. Why would you help us? Sexforal asked again. After what we did to Earth. Because this isn't about the Federation versus Earth anymore, Osei replied firmly. The Nexus is a threat to all sentient life. If it consumes enough civilizations, nothing will stop it from engulfing the galaxy. Dr. Chen activated a new display showing the most disturbing intelligence yet. Our analysis indicates the Nexus isn't just using Federation communication protocols by coincidence. We believe someone within the Federation hierarchy has been in contact with the Nexus, possibly for decades. A traitor. Sexforal's voice was hollow with disbelief. Or someone who believed they were creating a stronger Federation through communication with a superior intelligence, Matsuda suggested. Regardless, Admiral, we need your help to identify who it might be. Sexforal looked around the room at these humans who had every reason to hate him, yet had saved him, and now offered to save his people. Whatever resources I have are yours, he finally said. But do you truly believe you can stop the Nexus when the entire Federation military has failed? President Osei's smile was grim but determined. The Federation failed precisely because it thinks like a homogeneous entity. The Nexus anticipates every move because Federation tactics follow predictable patterns. Humanity, however, has something the Nexus cannot predict. Which is? Sexforal asked. Chaos, Admiral, she replied. Beautiful, unpredictable chaos. The war room beneath Geneva hummed with tension as human and Federation military leaders finalized Operation Firestorm. Holographic displays showed the Nexus processing hub at Proxima Centauri, the central node where absorbed consciousness patterns were integrated into the collective. Admiral Sexforal, now commander of the combined Federation survivors fleet, studied the human battle plan with growing alarm. This is madness, he protested as General Okafor outlined the attack strategy. Your ships will be outnumbered 30-1. The general's smile was cold as she activated a classified display. Not exactly. The hologram expanded to show hidden human fleets scattered throughout nominally empty systems, thousands of ships utilizing stealth technology beyond Federation understanding. But the true shock came with the revelation of the Lazarus ships, specialized vessels designed to generate quantum disruption fields that temporarily severed the Nexus hive mind's connections. Captain Eliza Kaminsky, designated to lead the Lazarus strike team, stepped forward. The tall, scurred woman manipulated the tactical display to demonstrate the technology. Standard tactics fail against the Nexus because it's a perfect hive mind. Instant communication, perfect coordination. But isolated Nexus units are just machines, vulnerable and confused. The demonstration showed captured Nexus drone ships becoming erratic when cut off from the collective. Federation officers murmured in surprise. This was the first vulnerability anyone had identified in the seemingly unstoppable enemy. How did you develop this? Ambassador Trell asked. The quantum disruptors are based on technology we were developing before banishment, Kaminsky explained. After the Federation expelled us, we accelerated the research without oversight restrictions. Sexforal clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This explains why the Federation monitoring stations detected unusual quantum fluctuations in your system. We assumed it was failed experimental work. We wanted you to think that, General Okafor confirmed. While you were watching our failures, we were perfecting the technology. As the briefing continued, Zexforal noted something odd in the deployment plan. Your Lazarus ships are positioned for a direct assault on the central processing node, he observed. That's suicide, even with your disruption technology. An uncomfortable silence fell over the human officers. Captain Kaminsky exchanged glances with President Osei, who nodded slightly. There's another component to the Lazarus protocol that we haven't shared yet, Kaminsky admitted. The quantum disruptors are only half the strategy. She activated a secure terminal, revealing images of human soldiers connected to neural interface devices. The other half involves human neural networks designed to temporarily interface with the fragmented Nexus consciousness, allowing our minds to infiltrate and sabotage the collective from within. Zexforal recoiled in horror. You would connect your minds to the Nexus. That's worse than death. Their consciousness would absorb yours instantly. Not instantly, Dr. Matsuda corrected, joining the briefing. Our tests indicate human minds resist absorption longer than any Federation species. Our neural patterns are more chaotic, less predictable. It gives us roughly 8 minutes to operate within their network before assimilation begins. 8 minutes is nothing, Zexforal protested. It's enough, Kaminsky stated with quiet certainty. Enough to plant corrupt data streams that will cascade through their network when we detonate the quantum resonance bombs. After the main briefing, Dr. Chen confronted President Osei in a private chamber adjacent to the war room. The Lazarus Protocol was never just about the ships, was it? She asked. Osei's expression was grim. We always knew disrupting the collective from outside wouldn't be enough. We need volunteers to risk their minds in direct neural contact. If they're captured by the collective, Chen didn't finish the sentence. Then their consciousness becomes part of the Nexus forever, Osei confirmed. A fate worse than death. Chen shuddered. How many volunteers? We need at least 50 neural infiltrators to achieve the necessary disruption. By morning, over 10,000 human soldiers had volunteered for neural interface duty. The selection process was brutal. Only those with particular cognitive patterns that resisted Nexus assimilation could be considered. As the final preparation phase began, Admiral Zexforal approached Captain Kaminsky in the ship bay where the Lazarus vessels were being readied. Why would anyone volunteer for this? He asked, knowing what awaits if captured. Kaminsky checked the neural interface equipment on her flight suit without looking up. Because if we fail, the entire galaxy falls. Some risks are worth taking. You've been selected. Zexforal was surprised. I'm leading the neural infiltration team, she confirmed. My mind has the highest resistance rating in the program. And if you're absorbed. Kaminsky finally met his compound eyes with a steady gaze. Then I'll fight from inside the collective until nothing remains of who I was. That's what humans do, Admiral. We don't stop fighting just because victory seems impossible. As the massive combined fleet prepared to depart Earth orbit, President Osei addressed all ships. The Federation banished humanity because they feared our unpredictability, she told them. Today, that unpredictability becomes our greatest weapon. Operation Firestorm begins in 12 hours. For Earth, for the Federation, for all sentient life, we will prevail. The space around Proxima Centauri erupted in blinding light as Operation Firestorm began. The Nexus responded with overwhelming force, its crystalline ships forming lattice patterns that efficiently distributed damage across their collective structure. Admiral Zexforal, coordinating from the Federation command ship Righteous Fury, watched in horror as the first wave of human attackers was systematically shredded by precision Nexus fire. Your diversion force is being decimated, he reported to Earth Command. They cannot hold much longer. They're not meant to, General Okafor's voice came through, unnervingly calm. They're doing exactly what we need. Zexforal suddenly understood as his tactical display updated. The initial attack had drawn Nexus defensive formations into a specific configuration, creating micro-gaps in their otherwise perfect lattice. Through these gaps, The Lazarus ships were performing impossible micro-jumps directly into Nexus formations. By the Ancient Ones, he whispered as the quantum disruptors activated, creating expanding bubbles where Nexus ships suddenly moved erratically, firing on each other in confusion. On the Lazarus flagship Prometheus, Captain Kaminsky led her neural interface team into the most dangerous mission imaginable. Technicians secured the final connections to her neural implant as she lay in the interface chamber. Disruption field stable, her executive officer reported. Neural pathways open. Nexus fragments detected within range. Begin interface, Kaminsky ordered. All teams, prepare for neural insertion on my mark. Across 12 Lazarus ships, 200 human operators initiated neural contact with the fragmented Nexus consciousness. The sensation was indescribable, like plunging into an ocean of alien thoughts, each trying to assimilate and consume their individuality. The battlefield became chaos as human neural infiltrators corrupted Nexus command networks, turning entire ship clusters against each other. Federation forces, led by Zexforal, exploited the openings with precision strikes against suddenly vulnerable targets. Deep in neural interface, Kaminsky discovered the horrifying truth. At the Nexus's core consciousness were absorbed patterns of Federation leaders who had championed homogeneity, their minds twisted into the very enemy they feared. She recognized the distinctive thought patterns of several Federation Council members who had disappeared years earlier. They'd been inside the Federation all along. She transmitted to command. The Nexus has been guided by absorbed Federation minds. But the Nexus adapted quickly, developing countermeasures against the disruptors. As the effect began to fade, Nexus ships realigned into defensive patterns, launching a desperate counterattack targeting the Prometheus. Kaminsky made a fateful decision. Breaking established interface protocols, she drove her consciousness deeper into the Nexus network than any human had gone before, guiding her ship on a collision course with the primary Nexus processing node. "Captain, you can't maintain separation at that depth," her neural technician warned. "Your consciousness will be absorbed." "Not before I complete the mission," she replied, her voice already taking on an echoing, composite quality as her mind began merging with the collective. The Prometheus detonated its quantum resonance bomb at the heart of the Nexus command structure, creating a cascading failure throughout the hive consciousness. As the explosion tore through both physical and neural space, Admiral Zexforal received a fragmented transmission from Kaminsky. Her consciousness dispersed, but somehow preserving her humanity within the collapsing Nexus network. "We've broken their unity," her voice came through, distorted and multiplied, as if spoken by many. "The collective is fracturing. Other minds are breaking free. I can help them. From inside." Around Proxima Centauri, Nexus ships began to drift aimlessly or turn on each other as their controlling intelligence dissolved into chaos. For the first time since they appeared, the Nexus was vulnerable. "All units," Zexforal ordered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't try to hide. "Target disabled Nexus vessels. Victory is within reach." 1 year after the Nexus's defeat, the Grand Geneva Assembly Hall hosted representatives from all surviving sentient species. Sunlight streamed through the vaulted crystal ceiling, illuminating a gathering unlike any in galactic history. Not just the traditional Federation species, but dozens of formerly isolated civilizations the Federation had deemed too primitive or too chaotic for inclusion. Admiral Zexforal, now bearing the scars of neural interface, a technology he had volunteered to test in the war's final days, stood at the center of the assembly floor. The once proud Artaxian's exoskeleton was dulled by stress, but his posture remained unbowed as he addressed the gathered delegates. "The old Federation died because it feared difference," he declared, his translator conveying the emotion his alien physiology couldn't express. "We enforced uniformity in thought and technology, creating the perfect target for the Nexus. Humanity's chaotic innovation, which we banished from our midst, was precisely what saved us all." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The past year had transformed galactic politics entirely. Rehabilitation ships orbited former Nexus worlds, working to recover and restore the millions of minds that had been absorbed into the collective. Many remained trapped between individual consciousness and lingering connection to the broken hive mind. President Osai rose to present the charter for the new interstellar Concordat, an alliance built on principles of diversity, mutual defense, and technological cooperation. The Nexus showed us the fatal flaw in how we organize galactic civilization, she stated. Uniformity is not strength, it is vulnerability. The Concordat will not just permit differences, it will celebrate and protect them. The most controversial provision, championed by Dr. Matsuda, established protected chaos zones throughout the galaxy, regions where experimentation and divergent development were not just permitted but encouraged, ensuring civilization never again became a monoculture vulnerable to Nexus-like threats. We must ensure that our species evolve along different paths, Matsuda explained. Different technologies, different societies, different ways of thinking. Our salvation lies in becoming more unlike each other, not more alike. As delegates prepared to vote on the charter, a special communication node activated at the center of the assembly. The holographic matrix coalesced into a familiar form, Captain Eliza Kaminsky, or what remained of her consciousness after the Battle of Broken Unity. The assembly fell silent. Kaminsky's digital form flickered with occasional distortions, showing hints of the countless other minds now intermingled with hers. After the Nexus collapse, fragments of her consciousness had been discovered still active within the network, leading efforts to help other absorbed victims find their way back to individuality. I speak for the recovered, she told the assembly, her voice carrying harmonic overtones from the other minds she now shared existence with. We who experienced the horror of forced unity have learned its greatest lesson. True strength comes not from uniformity, but from diversity. Her digital eyes found Zexvoral. Admiral, your people's absorption taught us how even the proudest species can be reduced to mere processing units in a collective that values sameness above all. And your sacrifice taught us that the chaos of human thought was never a weakness, Zexvoral replied. It was the one thing the Nexus could not anticipate or control. The vote that followed was nearly unanimous. The interstellar Concordat would replace the Galactic Federation, built on fundamentally different principles. Later, in the quiet corners of the assembly hall, Dr. Chen found Admiral Zexvoral staring at Earth through the panoramic windows. You knew, didn't you? He asked without turning. When you accepted banishment without protest, you knew the Federation's homogeneity made us vulnerable. We suspected, Chen admitted. Our xenopsychologists theorized that any civilization that enforces strict uniformity eventually creates the conditions for its own destruction, either from within or without. The Nexus would have found you eventually, Zexvoral observed. Your isolation couldn't have lasted forever. No, Chen agreed, but banishment gave us time to prepare without Federation restrictions, time to develop the technologies that eventually saved us all. The Federation's fatal error, Zexvoral mused, wasn't just banishing Earth. It was failing to understand why your unpredictability was so valuable. Chen smiled, watching as delegates from 100 worlds mingled in the hall behind them, their differences more apparent than their similarities. The irony, she said, is that by trying to contain us, the Federation freed us to become exactly what the galaxy needed, humans unbound by anyone's rules but our own. In the rehabilitation center orbiting former Nexus space, the digital consciousness of Captain Kaminsky sifted through fragmented minds, carefully rebuilding identities that had been absorbed. The work was painstaking, but with each recovery, the galaxy reclaimed another unique perspective that might one day save them all again. This is why we fought, she told a newly individuated Mizari consciousness. Not just to defeat the Nexus, but to protect the right of every being to be different, to think, create, and evolve in their own way. As the new Concordat took shape, humanity's reputation transformed from dangerous outliers to essential allies. Their unpredictability, once feared, became recognized as the galaxy's immune system, the chaos that prevented the order of civilization from becoming too perfect, too uniform, too vulnerable. Banishing Terra had indeed been the Federation's fatal error, but from that error, a stronger, more resilient galactic community had emerged, one that finally understood that true unity doesn't require uniformity, and that sometimes the most dangerous species is the one most worth keeping close.